Oh, it's about to get real spicy up in here. What's going on, everyone? Welcome to a Movie Emporium spoiler discussion / ending explained / review for Halloween Ends, the trilogy capper that is once again directed by David Gordon Green. So this is a spoiler discussion. It is a spoiler review. There will be non-spoiler review in the beginning before I go into the spoiler discussion, but just to make you aware, as I always do, a little bit of warning. Okay, so Halloween Ends is the trilogy capper to David Gordon Green's kind of reimagining of Halloween. It's a series that started in 2018 and of course had Halloween and then Halloween Kills, and basically is a continuation of the original Halloween movie that made Michael Myers no longer the kind of what I would call brother, I guess is the easiest way to put it. So Halloween Ends takes place 4 years later. It's said in the trailer. Of course, Michael Myers is back. Of course, Laurie Strode is back. Allison, who is the granddaughter of Laurie Strode's character, is in this movie. And, you know, it basically is, how do you conclude this trilogy, which, you know, how do you end Michael Myers' story with Laurie Strode's story? And that's what David Gordon Green's going for in this eventual conclusion. And, of course, that's about where I can go when it comes to non-spoiler territory on this synopsis. Okay, so it's very well known if you watched my reviews of Halloween and Halloween Kills. This series has gotten pretty bad, to be fairly honest. Halloween was fine for what it was worth. Halloween Kills was one of the worst movies I've seen that year. I am a huge Halloween fan. I've said it before. Halloween 1978 is one of my favorite movies of all time when it comes to horror. I think it's an absolutely amazing film. And I was really excited to see what David Gordon Green, who's a pretty talented director, and of course Danny McBride, who was writing the script with David Gordon Green, and of course Jason Blum, who of course is Blumhouse. I was excited for this trilogy, and then it just kind of completely went off the radar and went off the deep end, I guess you could say, not the radar. And I was not very hopeful. I just gotta admit, I was not very hopeful for Halloween Ends. I had heard things. I do a show with Jacob Anders Reviews, and we talked about what we had heard about this movie. And if you want to go watch it, you know, it's a spoiler discussion at some point in this review, but you can go find it on his channel. So with that said, I did get to see it early. I saw, you know, the night before it actually premieres on, I think, Peacock and of course theaters. And okay, so this isn't going to be a very kind review. This isn't going to be, especially my spoiler discussion, we'll talk, but as a fan of Halloween, as a fan of the franchise, like Halloween 2 and, you know, some of the Halloween 3 Season of the Witch, without uncertain terms, and I know movie making is hard, but David Gordon Green made some statements, and he made some statements about his views on what this movie was going to be. And all I can offer and all I can say without really being angry, which is what I'm going to get into the spoiler discussion, F this movie. F this movie. This movie is an absolute abomination of movie making. This is what happens when you allow a director and a writing staff, there's 4 writers in this movie, by the way, craft whatever the hell they want and make a travesty of a movie. There is plot points brought up in this movie that make no sense. The idea of Michael Myers being gone for 4 years makes no sense. There is a new character that is introduced that makes no sense. There is storylines that make no sense. And this movie is an absolutely devastating movie for a Halloween fan. Is it have some cool kills? Yes, but that is not what Halloween's about. And on top of everything, if you've seen Halloween Kills, there is some stuff brought up that makes no absolute sense and actually ruins the trajectory of David Gordon Green's trilogy. And it's kind of played for stupidity in this movie. It's played for laughs. I think, you know, as much as I love Jamie Lee Curtis, there is something truly off about her character in this entire franchise. I understand that PTSD and the horrifying events of the original Halloween movie were tragic. It was a tragic event. You're going to be scarred from that. This movie trilogy takes that to almost a laughable level, and this movie doesn't even help that. And on top of that, I don't feel that the writers, 4 writers, by the way, 4 writers for this movie, as well as, you know, David Gordon Green being one of them, have a concept of what makes this franchise. You know, as bad as the Halloween original movies were, Halloween 2, 3, 5, 6, whatever, Resurrection is a whole different problem. Those movies at least understood somewhat what Michael Myers was. This movie doesn't even go there. It's almost like it's trying to be just a gore fest. It's trying to make Michael Myers more than he is, and it just doesn't work. There's nothing about this movie that works. The way it starts out, the way it plays out, the way it attempts to make a character out of this individual. Like, for instance, you know, this is my same problem with Kills, is like there's stupidity running amok in this movie. You know, the young girl, the Allison character, who's played by I think Andi Matichak, I don't know what they did with her character. She went from being a kind of, you know, interesting high school girl to just being a complete idiot in this movie. And I just, oh my god, this movie's insane, and this movie's stupid, and I just can't believe what they did with this movie. It's hard not to want to spoil it because there's a spoiler discussion, but this movie makes choices, and for better or worse, those choices do not land at any point in this movie. And yes, like I said, the kills are graphic and gory, as they have been in this entire trilogy, but you can't rely on those kills. You can't rely on that concept, because the idea of Michael Myers is more than killing. It's a character that affects things, and an idea affects things, and it does show somewhat in this movie the effect nature of what Michael Myers is, but it's never fully developed. You know, it's just, I don't know what I was expecting. Maybe I had a little bit of hope for this movie, but it's one of the worst movies I've seen this year. It really is. I give credit for them for trying, but I don't understand. And like I said, you know, the statement about what John Carpenter says, where he just wants paychecks, which is cool. We all want paychecks, but he's gonna let people do what they want to do with the franchise, I think is an absolutely devastating quote from a master of horror and a master of filmmaking, to say, I don't care what they do with it, just give me the paycheck, I'll do some music for it. And that just, it's embarrassing. This movie's an embarrassment. It's an absolute travesty of a film. So that's where I'm gonna leave it on my non-spoiler review. It's yeah, it's bad. It's everything that you fear about this franchise. If you like Halloween Kills, you'll probably like this movie, but I don't get it. I don't get it at all, and it saddens me that I'm at this point where I just kind of given up on this franchise. It's really going to take a lot of creative ability for this franchise to ever have something that's worth a value and note and all that good stuff. So anyways, that'll do it for my non-spoiler take of this movie. If you want to hear about the spoiler, it'll come up next, but if not, thank you for watching. But without further ado, let's talk about spoilers of this travesty of a movie. Okay, so Halloween Kills takes place 4 years later. It's a movie about the kind of nature of what happened after Halloween Kills, the effects and the ideas and the problems that lie on people that are not only emotionally scarred but physically scarred, because that the older woman that was had the little drone and she was stabbed, she survives in this movie. And this movie has an interesting concept and idea, because the idea of Michael Myers and what he is and who he is never what I would call fully explored sometimes. So the idea of like the ramifications of who Michael Myers is pretty fascinating if you think about it. What this movie decides to do, which is the real problem of this movie, is not the fact of Michael Myers being this myth, this legend, which I don't know how after 4 years and everything he's done, he's considered a myth or a legend at this point. It's what they do with his character and another character named Corey Cunningham, who's played by Rohan Campbell. That is, it's kind of you're kind of questioning the logic and reasoning behind what's going on. And basically, it starts out, Laurie Strode is writing a novel, which you know she would do, a survivor novel and stuff like that. Her granddaughter is alive. Of course, her daughter died in the last movie in some weird kind of fashion. I don't get it, what happened. It almost feels like, you know, Michael Myers is not even real at this point. But she's writing a novel. She's more grandmotherly. You know, she's living with Allison, who is working as a nurse, like, you know, what, you know, people at this age do. It's 4 years later. And basically another thing that happens at the beginning of this movie, which is interesting, is Corey Cunningham's character goes to babysit this young kid. This young kid's an asshole or jerk or whatever you want to call him. Parents leave, come back, and of course Corey gets locked in this attic because he's trying to find the kid. And he kicks the door open, and unfortunately the kid is killed. The kid falls off the very high, because it's a very rich family, so he falls off the very high, you know, level of the house and dies in a very violent fashion, as you would expect from this type of movie. It leads to this character of Corey Cunningham being a pariah, a kind of looked down upon type of character, which, you know, was an accident. It happened, but you understand why it is. And then this movie decides to do something that I unfortunately feared was going to happen because I had heard about this. But Corey Cunningham becomes kind of the main character of this movie. Laurie Strode is always the background character. She's always the one that you're going to follow. Instead of following Laurie Strode's character, I don't feel that the creators of this movie, the writers, including Green and McBride, had really a story to go off of. Yes, the pandemic kind of messed everything up. That's fine. But get this. So Corey's character is picked on by, I don't know why every horror film has to have high school bullies, but these high school bullies are jerks and a-holes, and they pick on Corey's character. And Corey is an individual that's very meek and very just kind of sad and stuff like that. He works for like his mother husband or something like that at a junkyard, and at some point he is come across these kids again who basically knock him off what do I call, like an overpass, I guess you could say. And this is when he's taken by Michael Myers, I'm guessing, into the underground sewer system, because apparently Michael Myers is Pennywise now. And Corey Cunningham becomes a conduit for Michael Myers, who's severely injured and has apparently been hiding in the sewers for 4 years. 4 years, people. 4 years. He's been hiding. Nobody thought to ever go search the sewers. No, he's been gone for 4 years, and everybody just forgot about him, like he was, you know, I don't know, Anakin Skywalker or something like that. And he's an individual that becomes a conduit for Michael Myers, and yeah, it's nonsense. It really is. He starts getting picked on by every single person in this town, including like the DJ and his mom, who is very much like one of the characters. I can't remember his name, but one of the characters, I think not Richie or Stan or whatever his name was in it. His mom's like really mean and abusive to him, and so she has that situation with Corey. Corey has problems with the high school kids. He has a problem with this deputy who keeps hitting on Allison because she dated him for a while. And that's not even the worst part about this whole situation. It's the fact that they made Allison an idiot, and like, once again in this movie, where she's dealing with the mental anguish of losing her mom. She's having to deal with that. She's having to, you know, move on with her life. It's been 4 years. But on top of everything, she just started, just out of the blue, tense, you know, this movie takes like forever to get going, by the way. Out of the blue, Corey hurts his hand. Jamie Lee Curtis's Laurie Strode brings him into the hospital. He basically, there's this like romantic connection between Allison and Corey, which becomes the stupidest thing you ever see in your entire life. Allison goes from a somewhat competent woman to being a almost kind of caricature, almost just it's almost like you see kind of the writing staff going, she's interesting here, but what do we do with her here? And you start seeing like maybe like they got drunk or high when they were making this, like when they were writing the script, and the level of just brain cells started to go down with Allison's character, and the fact that she like yells at Laurie Strode's character because, you know, of the whole incident with like Corey, how Corey is starting to become possessed by Michael Myers, and the idea of like, you know, Laurie sees the evil inside of him, which like David Gordon Green said, like a lot of the stuff may not make sense to you, and that's fine, I guess you could say. And that whole Corey Allison thing, on top of Corey just starting to kill people that he really hates, there's no justifiable reason behind any of it. There's no logic or sense to any of the storytelling of that moment, of that idea, of that sensibility to what could make an interesting story. To watch Corey just go on this murder rampage, somehow be connected in some form. This is like, if you've ever seen Friday the 13th, I think it was Tommy. I think his name's Tommy or something like that. Please forgive me. I'm not real familiar with Friday the 13th, but I know the storyline very well, where like the victim of Jason becomes possessed and is like killing people or something like that. But that's what it feels like here, where he's being possessed by Michael Myers, but Michael Myers is like following behind him. Like, so it's like a Padawan master, Padawan Jedi. What is going on? Like, I'm trying to like wrap my head around this whole idea of like, now Michael Myers is, he's considered the boogeyman. He's considered to have these mystical abilities, but he needs a conduit to kill people. Like, is he sucking? Is he leeching the energy out of, like? There's no logical sense to any of this stuff going on in this movie. And then on top of that, you have, you know, all these characters, which are all mean-spirited characters, which are all hating on Corey's character. And then you have Allison's character who just becomes so stupid in the movie, and then you have Corey's character. So here's another thing I have to throw out there. Nick Castle, who played, of course, Michael Myers, he does show up as a homeless guy. I think it's him. You know, I was thinking maybe, like, you know, Michael Myers is dead and somehow he's possessed by the you know, the whatever Michael Myers. But if you've seen Christine, the movie Christine that, of course, John Carpenter directed, you'll notice some similarities between Corey's character and Arnie's character, because they're both called Cunningham, by the way. But you'll notice, like, the transition of, like, the nerdish kind of impish character, I guess you could say, in a lot of respects, of Corey's character, like Arnie, and then he becomes the bad boy, and then he starts doing things that are, like, really kind of suspect in a lot of respects. That is really crappy storytelling, to be fairly honest. Yeah, I understand it's doing a homage to John Carpenter's Christine, and it's very prevalent if you know Christine very well, but it's really badly done, to be fairly honest, because there's a moment where, you know, Corey is finally taken over, like, the Shape's mask, or Michael Myers' mask, and starts killing, goes on a killing spree. And there's a moment where the teenagers, the ones that are picking on him, follow him to the junkyard, and he runs over one, like the car Christine does with that one of the bullies in that movie, where he runs over the character or kills him in a lot of ways. And I was not really happy about that. I feel that you can do a Halloween movie without just kind of ripping off another movie, to be fairly honest. And that is a lot of what this movie's problem is just it's ripping off other stuff. It's not really giving us a cohesive story. It's adding a character. I don't blame Rohan Campbell for taking this role. You really didn't need to have Corey Cunningham in this movie. It serves no logical purpose to the story. It just basically what it's doing is it's fluffing out the story to begin with. It's giving stuff to this movie that, honestly, I don't think they even had an idea of how they wanted to end this movie without, you know, basically they wanted to have Michael Myers or Laurie Strode die. But it's just one of those things where you sit there and you go, okay, fine, I understand that you bring this character in, but it's so haphazardly done. It's like having the character in Halloween Kills, you know, the patient, or the mental patient who they throw off or falls off the roof, and that whole storyline about, you know, the chaos that ensues, and they, you know, think it's this character. It's adding stuff into the movie that just doesn't need to be added in there. The whole idea of, like, you know, Michael Myers, like, if they had just continued this right after Halloween Kills, I think it would have worked better. But you're adding 4 years to the mix. You're adding a character that serves no real purpose, that has one of the worst kind of story arcs in the Halloween franchise. You're adding in Allison's character, who really just doesn't serve a purpose outside of just being the boyfriend of his character. And he is a little bit like Jason Patrick in Lost Boys, and she's like Star, you know, the Jamie Presley, Jamie Gertz character. And that's all it is. And this, the way it plays out, and the worst offending thing about this, outside of that, is the fact that this movie takes forever to get going. This movie doesn't really have Michael Myers till like halfway through the movie. It really focuses on Corey Cunningham's character and the kind of problems with that. It focuses on the kind of the fallout and the nature of everything with Michael Myers, which is fine. It's interesting. Like, for instance, you're waiting for Michael Myers to come back, and I know they're waiting to build up the tension and stuff like that. Once again, there is a big fight sequence at the end of this movie between Laurie and, you know, Nick Castle's the Shape, or her Michael Myers character, who is also played by Jude Courtney, and they kill him, and of course Laurie's like, kill me, but of course Allison saves the day, and, you know, they basically kill him in many ways possible, and then parade him around in the city like Field of Dreams, and put him into the grinding machine that, you know, destroys cars and stuff like that. And yeah, Laurie finishes her book. Allison leaves Haddonfield, and at the very end of the movie, we see the mask of Michael Myers just sitting in Laurie's house. And yeah, that is Halloween Ends in a nutshell, and it's so bad. If you're listening to this and you're not seeing the movie and you're going, that makes no sense. Try being a huge Halloween fan, knowing that Halloween Kills was really bad, knowing what you may know about this movie, and it being even worse, being even more stupider than what you even expected, because once again, you have a character named Corey Cunningham, who once again is a embodiment of Arnie Cunningham from Christine, who makes these weird ass decisions, still lives in Haddonfield for some weird reason. I don't know if he has like a protection order, not protection order, but like stay at home order. He can only go to work or something like that from, being acquitted or whatever. But there's a lot of stuff that's just not explained. Like, they don't even get really into the whole mysticism like they talked about in the Halloween Kills, which I really hated to begin with. But it feels like they were like, oh yeah, maybe that wasn't as good. The fact that Corey becomes like, a surrogate or a conduit for Michael Myers, that's never really fully explained. It just, a lot of that stuff happens in this movie, and it feels like a movie that either David Gordon Green was really bored and didn't feel like he had much investment anymore, or they just didn't know what they wanted out of this movie. They didn't know what they wanted to do. They just needed to get to an endpoint where Michael Myers is killed. And that is an absolute travesty, because Michael Myers is one of the great horror villains of all time. And yeah, he has his problems when it comes to storytelling aspects, but it just feels like a lot of it is just throw whatever we can at the wall, wet paper towels at the wall, and see what sticks. And they must have found a lot of stuff that stuck, because, a lot of illogical stuff. It's like, Family Guy with the balls, the manatee balls and stuff like that. It feels like that because it's just not a coherent movie. It's not a very good looking movie to look at. It just, I question. I know Jamie Lee Curtis is very committed to doing this character, and she gets a payoff in this movie. It's just a lot of things. It really is. It's a lot of things about this movie that really feels frustrating, and where it goes and how it finishes itself out, and the idea of what Corey is and his kind of concept. It feels like it was just added in, like pasted in as a character they felt like they want to make homage to. The idea that there's like, this must be a David Gordon Green thing. He must be a huge fan of Hard Target, because Hard Target shows up in this movie. One of the father of Corey's watching it on the TV. Why is he at the junkyard, for one? The father gives one of the bullies a rifle, and the kid ends up killing the father. And of course, they show John Carpenter just the Thing in this movie. I don't get it. I really don't. I don't understand what happened. I don't understand why they thought this was a good idea. There's so much in this movie that could have worked, and none of it does. And as much as I like Jamie Lee Curtis, her character just doesn't work in this movie. She feels like a woman that feels like she's a woman that went through way much worse stuff than she really does. And they try to blame her for everything, which is a stupid idea. And they try to delve into the idea of like the after effects of stuff like the insurrection on January 6th, and the idea of like how people will jump to conclusions really easily, and it can be the downfall of them and stuff like that. And you really feel that in here, and like how Laurie Strode's character is blamed, and she does cause a lot of the problems herself, but I don't really feel like that she should just get this brunt of this blame. I mean, it feels like people are just jumping to conclusions, and I guess it's like the real world, but that's kind of where I'm going to leave it, because I've been talking for almost a half hour now, and I really don't want to talk about this movie anymore, because it's a mess, and the kills are just, for instance, like, one of the nurses gets a promotion because she is very attractive, and she kind of hits on the doctor who's an a-hole. In that whole sequence where she dies and he dies makes no sense. Why is Corey there? I know he's in love with Allison's character. The whole romantic relationship of Allison just doesn't work with Corey. So anyways, yeah, that's where I'm going to leave it. It's a terrible film. It's probably going to be my worst of the year list. It's a film that I didn't really have high hopes for, and actually it was actually a lot worse than I was expecting. So, you know, take it for what it's worth. Take it, you know, leave it however you want to look at it. I wish I could offer more. I wish I had better outcomes. You know, I still think David Gordon Green's a talented director. I don't think this was the right project for him, to be fairly honest. I think if he sticks to more indie space than he is with this Halloween Ends, this is like Colin Trevorrow doing Jurassic franchise. It didn't need to happen. I think if they had left it alone in 2018, not even doing that film, I think I would have loved this franchise, but much more. But right now, can't say. It's one of the worst things I've seen this year. So it's unfortunate, but with that said, that'll do it. That would be my unfortunate spoiler discussion, Andy Explains review of this film, Halloween Ends. It is on Peacock and, of course, theaters for the moment. But, yeah, it's a pretty terrible film, so... Anyways, with that said, thank you so much for joining me for this spoiler discussion. Maybe you'll like it. Let me know in the comments below, as I always say. What did you think of this movie? What do you think of the trilogy overall? It is a spoiler discussion, so go at it. You know, if you don't like what I say, that's perfectly all right. It's just, it is what it is. So, anyways, without further ado, if you like what you see on this video, awesome. Hit the subscribe button to join Movie Emporium. Hit that notification bell at the top to find what's coming next. If you like this video, awesome. Hit that like button, and we'll see you guys on the next video. Peace out.